Here we are for day number 10 of the Service to Purpose, the Mission is You challenge. My name is Brooks Holland, and my gift is seeing the greatness inside of you and helping you realize it and pull it out of you, because I spent well over 2 decades self-sabotaging and ignoring all the signs of the greatness that was inside. And that's why I call this service. We're going to go from serving that identity, serving the ego, serving all those things, to serving your purpose and serving yourself so that you can serve the greater good. And day 10, here we are. So I just want to start with I've gotten quite a few comments, messages, things like that for people that stumbled across this challenge. Maybe it was video 6 or video 7 or whatever it was. And here's the thing I just want to say, whatever video you came across this on, it doesn't mean like, oh my God, I'm at step 7, I need to go all the way back or whatever. No, because that was the perfect time for you to see the video. That was the perfect time for you to get engaged with this challenge. And again, like I said from the beginning, I don't have this super mapped out plan. I've got there's some general principles on a path that I'm going to be taking you through. But what's awesome is you get the video that you need at that time. And then from there, you can move forward and go through the process. If you followed the last couple days, I've talked about how we're going to get to that place and do that work that can be somewhat uncomfortable. And there's a couple things that I've shared to really kind of help prepare you for that. And this is where that's going to start coming into play. So when we look at those limiting beliefs, when we look at that story in our head that keeps going on about, not good enough, not worthy, not lovable, whatever it is, this is about going back to the root and figuring out where that story started, so that we can process it and so that we can start changing it. And so here's the deal. There's an incident that happens. We can just call it, a lot of, this was something hard for me when I would hear the word trauma. Trauma was you got your leg blown off, not that there was somebody said something to you. But let's just say there's an incident that happens, and in that incident, we give it meaning. So maybe your parents yelled at you about something. Maybe you broke something or somebody yelled at you, you're an idiot. So there was something that happened, and then you gave meaning to it. And along with that meaning, when that thing happened because you didn't feel good, there's emotion attached to it. And that's the key part that we're going to come back to in a minute. But once you have that belief, that I'm not good enough, that drives the story. And the story is what we start living into every day. And then the story drives our behaviors, and then our behaviors drive our actions, and our actions drive our results. And in the end, you get crappy results that feed right back in to the entire system. And a lot of times what happens is, 'cause I know this happened for me, is that we can know logically like what happened. It's like, my parents did this, or this wasn't my case, but my parents got divorced, and we can think through all these things logically. And that's great. That's a great first step as far as where the awareness comes in. But to really get on the other side of that, to get to the root, it's that third piece right there in the middle. It's the emotion. I'll just use divorce as an example because, over 50% of marriages are ending in divorce now. And these are all things that happen in a child's brain. Like, there's a reason, 4 and 5-year-olds aren't flying airplanes. They're not rocket scientists. They're just kids. They should just be being. But what happens is, when we're kids, the parents get divorced, and we all know as adults that, hey, when a couple gets divorced, it has nothing to do with the kids. The adults didn't work out. But the childhood mind doesn't think like that, doesn't process that. So the childhood mind starts going, well, if I was good enough, they would have stayed together. If I was lovable, they would have stayed together. So what happens is parents got divorced, but then the kid gives meaning to that. The meaning that I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, because if I was, they would have stayed together. And the thing is, there's sadness and it's emotion there. But the thing is then, the not good enough, the not lovable, it goes on to repeat, because that's the story that drives the behavior, that drives the actions. I'm sure we've all had friends, that have serial dated, 10 people that look completely different, but it's the exact same story, the exact same thing. That is the story that they have, and then that's their behavior, and they keep getting the same result. But in the end, how you change this is you got to go back to that emotional piece. And that's the biggest thing in society it's the most terrifying thing for people is to actually feel. You can be out at a restaurant, a table full of people start laughing, nobody thinks anything of it. People will pay lots of money to go to a comedy club to laugh. We don't stuff laughter. Nobody hears a really funny joke and stuffs the laughter so that it's going to come popping off, 10, 15, 20 years later. No, what we stuff is we stuff the emotions that we don't think we're supposed to. And the biggest thing is crying. We're not supposed to show sadness, so we stuff it. Somebody close to us dies, well, we got to be strong. And yes, there's a time to be strong. There's also a time when you have to process those emotions. And again, in this process, you have an incident, there's the meaning you give to it, there's also the emotion that's tied to it, but then that meaning drives the stories, which drives the behaviors, which drives the actions, which leads to the results. So to break this cycle, we got to get back to the root, and we've got to sit with that emotion for what happened. Where you got to sit with the emotion of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, not being loved. And this is where what I shared earlier comes into play. We have to face it and we have to feel it. I got that from one of my mentors, David Mehler. And the other huge thing is emotions, they last from seconds to minutes. Let me say it again. Emotions last from seconds to minutes. And that ties into because the suffering is in the avoidance of the suffering. That's just like I shared with you, that person where they lost their parents, but they'd never processed it. They'd never actually allowed themselves to cry and actually actually be sad, demonstrate those feelings of sadness. And now they can do it. And it was the coolest thing. And then 2 or 3 minutes later, they're ready to go about their day. And that energy is gone. So there you have it. Sit back, and these are all going to be happen. This is all going to be stuff that happened when you were a child, when you were young. It's not going to be something that happened when you were 18, 19, 20. It's going to be way before that. And it's going to be really sitting there, and it's going to be hard. And because a lot of times this is stuff we've buried, we've repressed, we've done really good at stuffing and keeping it hidden down there. It's like taking a beach ball and holding it underwater, and we just keep adding air to it. Eventually, it's going to start popping off. And that's where it starts popping off when we get triggered. That's when it starts popping off, when we lose our temper. Something hits that pain point and, boom, sends us off. So every time now when that discomfort, those feelings come up, it's time to lean into them. You've got that process and go back. Okay, what could have happened? What's the meaning that I gave to it? And the biggest piece is that emotion, but you can kind of skip over that for quickly. So here's the meaning I gave to it. These are the stories. These are the behaviors. These are the actions. These are the results. Okay, I see it all logically now. Now I got to go back and feel it. Again, it's simple, but it's not easy. We have to feel. There's no amount of to-do lists. There's no amount of staying busy. There's no amount of all that stuff in the end that'll work. At some point, you have to face and feel the feelings head on. And the beauty of that, and this is what I'm telling you, because this was a game changer for me, is that emotions last for seconds to minutes. So go back, find that, get to a quiet place and think back to what it is, and then actually feel. Allow yourself to feel those emotions, because that will start your healing process. So try keeping these videos right around 10 minutes or less. So leave a comment. Let me know what registers here. Let me know your biggest takeaways, and just give me some feedback. And I will see you tomorrow for day number 11.